Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. So good to see you on this beautiful day. To honor a man who had a beautiful heart and made an amazing difference in the lives of so many in our community, across Oklahoma, across the world for that matter. And we're glad that you're here to honor Dr. Toal. So, as we gather together to honor and celebrate the life of a truly remarkable man, Dr. Kyle Toal, I want you to keep him in your heart and in your mind as we share our comments today. My name is Richie Splitt. I'm the president and CEO for Norman Regional Health System, and it's great to see all of your faces. We're actually live streaming this event and reaching those who were unable to be here with us today. Dr. Toal was an exceptional individual who happened to be a talented heart surgeon. He possessed highly skilled hands, a brilliant mind, and a deeply caring heart. In the OR, he was a master of performing highly complex procedures with relative ease. In life, he was a man with boundless intellectual curiosity that fueled his passion for medicine and for people. Dr. Toal was a man who, without a doubt, truly and deeply loved his family and spoke of all of you often. Dr. Toal also loved his profession and the people with whom he worked. And it's so great to see all of your faces today, the healers of Norman Regional Health System, and from other organizations where he worked. In fact, it was in 1991, when Dr. Toal was asked to create the first ever cardiovascular surgery program at Norman Regional Hospital. And I thank God that he said yes. And with his leadership, we have seen the program grow and flourish, and almost entirely due to his personal devotion to its success over the years. Through his work, Dr. Toal saved countless lives and improved the quality of life for so many of his patients. But beyond his skill and expertise, he was also known for his kindness and his compassion. He treated everyone with respect and always put the needs of his patients first. He cared for them like family. In fact, he would often say to those seeking his expert opinion and surgical services, "If you were my mother, I would or would not perform this procedure. If you were my father, my brother, my sister," and later in his career, "If you were my child, I would or would not do this." You can imagine the confidence and the trust that thoughtful approach engendered in the relationship between Dr. Toal and his patients. It's something that we should all mark in our lives in a way that we can approach the care that we deliver at Norman Regional as well. And in addition to his professional accomplishments, Kyle Toal was also deeply loved by his colleagues and friends. And thank you all again for being here to honor and celebrate his life. He had a warm and generous spirit and was always there to lend a helping hand, to offer words of encouragement to those in need. His passion for life was truly infectious, and he had a way of inspiring those around him to be their best selves in all that they did. I personally appreciated his intellect and humor and how he would masterfully weave both of them together in everyday encounters. And I can think of no better example of that than the recent marriage toast that he presented to his daughter, Coralie, and his new son-in-law, Austin, at their wedding. And Coralie couldn't be with us today, but it was a wonderful toast and way to honor the two of them. He had beautiful words, loving words, and he used them to honor the newlyweds on their very special day. And in that spirit, as we honor the memory and legacy of Kyle Toal, I would like to offer a Toalism, my very own Toalism, that I believe that he would have appreciated. And it goes something like this. Today is St. Patrick's Day, and many of you are wearing the traditional color green. It looks great on you. You all look great. But by the way, did you know the original St. Patrick's Day color was blue? That's because blue was the color of St. Patrick's vestments, or the garments that he wore as a Catholic bishop in Ireland. And Did you know that St. Patrick was not actually Irish? He was born in Britain and brought to Ireland as a slave. He escaped his captors on the island. He went on to become a Catholic priest and returned to Ireland as a missionary wearing blue vestments or garments. Dr. Toal's intellect and intellectual curiosity filled him and eventually the rest of us who interacted with him on a daily basis with those types of fun and interesting facts. And I will always remember and cherish those conversations that we had, those conversations that were often sprinkled with those fun facts, just like that. And so in closing, I want to ask you all to hold that color blue in your mind for just a moment longer. For it was Dr. Toal's pleasing, harmonious, and calming voice that I will always hear, and it will be his blue scrubs that I will remember seeing just below that smiling face. Today, as we celebrate Dr. Toal's life, let us remember him not only for the professional achievements that he did here and throughout his career, but also the love and the kindness that he showed all of us. Let us honor his memory by striving to live in our own lives with the same passion, dedication, and compassion. Kyle Toal will be deeply missed, but his legacy will live on through the countless lives he touched and the countless hearts that he healed. Thank you again for being here today. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rick McCurdy, who will say a few words.
Hello, everybody. I'm honored and humbled to be able to say a few words. And thank you, Susan and John and Ben. I'm sorry that Coralie's not here. But just like Kyle, she has obligations, and that's part where he was. I remember back in the late 80s, I was talking to Cousin Bill. I'm not sure if Bill's here or not. But we'd been in practice for about 10 years, and we'd started a heart program. We had wonderful surgeons coming down from Oklahoma City. They would come and go, but there needed to be some stability. And he said, well, why don't you call one of your buddies? So I called John Randolph, who is everybody's friend, right? And John had come down here, and I talked to John a little bit about the situation. He said, the guy you need to get is Kyle Toal. Said he's just the best. And I'd met Kyle at a thoracic surgery meeting back in the day, and I didn't know what to think of him initially because his golf swing was just too perfect. And but he was many fellows under Dr. Elkins, who was one of many mentors that Dr. John Schilling, chair of the department at OU, had brought in, including Dr. Rainey Woods, Dr. Caesar Greenfield, Ron Elkins, and others. And so I was hopeful that he would have interest in our program here. And I'd met Kyle through the Dakels and other people, and I thought it was an easy transition to come here because he knew many of the guys on staff. But we had a long talk about it, and he, right off the bat, it was a big hit with the patients, the nursing staff, the other physicians. He had a sense of humor that was unbelievable. The intellect, to the eulogy from last couple of weeks ago was just beautiful. There's nothing much more than I can add, but historically, he came down here, had been here enough, knew that he liked to be here. And I thought about Kyle, since he lives in Oklahoma City, how it would work out with bad weather. I don't know that there was ever a failure for him to come here and take care of sick patients. But don't think we would have a healthplex, honest to God, if we didn't have Kyle Toal. The cardiac program here, we have wonderful cardiologists, but I don't know if there's a name that defines the success of our cardiac program as much as Kyle Toal. To me, the name Kyle Toal stills the air. It's a beautiful day to day. Back in the day, Coach Bud Wilkinson, he would walk from one end of the end zone to the other. It was cloudy and rainy. When he came back, the sun was out. So I think I'll always think of a day like today as a Kyle Toal day. I'm so thankful for our friendship. It means very much to me, as it does to many of you all here in a working relationship. I'm sure many of his patients are here today as well. Again, thank you for allowing me to say a few words in honor of Kyle Toal, the best.
All right, well, I guess I'm next. And first of all, I want to clear up a little bit about the history of Kyle coming here. It was me that brought him here. It wasn't any of these guys. Actually, it stems back to 1988. I was a first-year cardiology fellow, and there was a senior thoracic surgery fellow named John Randolph who scared the pants off of me. And every day he'd come up to me and go, "Think Norman, crook," because he wanted to start this program here. And the plan was I was going to come down in 1991 and kind of get the ball rolling, and then he would move down. Well, 1991 rolled around, and John says, "No, I don't think I'm coming there. But I got this guy. His name's Kyle Toal, and I think you'll enjoy him too." And so first case came around for me to call Kyle about, and I called him, and he comes down, and I'm kind of expecting another John Randolph. But instead, this guy just starts talking to me. I'm thinking, man, he's a nice guy. About 15 minutes later, when's he going to shut up? And about 15 minutes after that, it was, how did Churchill get involved in this conversation? So, I mean, but that was just Kyle. And he was just larger than life, very friendly, would do anything for this place. When I was thinking about that, it reminded me of another story where it was early on, and we didn't necessarily have all the supplies at Norman Regional that we needed for some of the surgeries. And one night I called Kyle from the emergency room, and I said, "Oh, I've got this guy with an aortic dissection. You need to get down here fast." So I'm in the emergency room taking care of this guy, and all of a sudden Kyle comes in, and he's got like 3 highway patrolmen with him, and he's slapping them all on the back. "Oh, it's good to meet y'all," and all that. And I'm like, "Kyle, what in the heck is going on?" And he said, "Well, I stopped by Baptist on the way down because I wasn't sure that we were going to have all the aorta sizes that we needed. And so I'm driving down 240." He said, and I got pulled over for speeding, and I pulled into this 7-Eleven parking lot, and suddenly police cars blocked every exit, and the helicopter turns on its light overhead, and they told me I was going 120 miles an hour. And he said, I was scared to death, and I got out of the car and said, wait, I'm on the way to emergency. I'm a doctor. And he goes, "Look, I've even got an aorta to prove it." So the point of the story is that even when Kyle's getting arrested, he can make friends with anybody. So and as Richie and Rick have said, his knowledge of medicine, his knowledge of history, his knowledge of really anything, it was just incredible. He had the biggest mind I think I've ever come across. And he would engage anyone on any subject, and it didn't take long before you figured out that he knew more about it than you did. So I'm glad that they put this obituary in the Sacks, because that's one of the best written obituaries I've ever seen. I think Kyle actually wrote it for himself. But many accolades. One that I thought was really cool was the fact that he was inducted into the El Reno High School Hall of Fame, and I think that's really neat. That all the people that go through there, that Kyle's one that's picked out for that. But despite his intellect, his education, his accolades, Kyle was not an arrogant person. We all know that. He worked with the staff. There was no one on the staff that was too small, too insignificant. There was no question that was too insignificant. He was there to help. He was there to teach. Everybody, from the top to the bottom was part of Team Toal. And that additionally carried over to the way he talked patients. He went into them, down with them, and talked for at least a half an hour. And before they ever got to the medical stuff, he knew about them, he knew about their children, he knew about their career, particularly he knew about their military service. He treated every patient, every family with respect, with dignity, with kindness, and he was just a remarkable guy in that regard. Whenever he would call me with a referral for a patient, it always started the same way. You're going to love this guy. And he would tell me about his kids and his military service and what kind of plane he flew in World War II. And it was amazing how Kyle could interrelate with his patients and with people. I over the last couple weeks, I have really discovered how much he had impacted people's lives. I have had innumerable people coming into the office just with heartfelt sorrow, talking about how sad they are about their hero, Kyle Toal, dying. And like I said, I mean, I knew that he had been impactful, but it was just amazing to me how sad, how touched these people were. One more quick story about Kyle. I think everybody will enjoy this. But early on in our careers, when Kyle and I were both still working over at the Porter campus, the Healthplex wasn't built. A patient was going through the recovery from his surgery. He was doing well, and either Kyle or I wrote an order. Believe it or not, at one time doctors wrote orders. We didn't enter it in the computer. But we wrote an order to advance the patient's diet. So the nurse goes in and asks the patient, well, the doctor said we can advance your diet. What kind of a diet would you like? And the patient said, well, how about the Crook Toal diet? It looks like they eat pretty well. So anyway, so in closing, obviously we're all going to miss Kyle. I'm going to miss him greatly. The world was just a better place with Kyle in it, and I don't think it'll ever be the same without him in it. He was a scholar and a gentleman, and I'm going to miss him greatly. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Miller. I was Dr. Toal's partner the last 2 years. I moved here because of Dr. Toal. He had a personality that was just a perfect match for who I am and who I wanted as a partner. He's very endearing to everyone I've ever known, and I'm sure each one of you individually has a personal story that you could relate about some sort of instance where you talk with him privately and to know you. As a partner, he's everything I wanted to be. Kyle's better than me. He's a better talker. If he was up here, he'd do a better job of this than I would. He'd go in and talk to families and relate with them on a level that I've never been able to do. It was just perfect. Every week, at the end of the week, he would say, Dave, don't forget how much I love you. I'll never forget. I love you.
I'm not an eloquent speaker like these other people, but I'm Susie. I am representing the cardiovascular nursing staff at Norman Regional. I've been here since 1999. I've been charge nurse since we've been in this facility. I came here as an experienced cardiovascular nurse, but had absolutely no surgical experience. And I was very intimidated when I met Dr. Toal the first time. I was scared to death to recover the first overnight heart with him, and I got very timidly approached him and whispered in his ear, "What do I call you about? When do I call you? I don't want to bother you." He looked around, got in my face, and whispered, "Don't let my patient blanking die, and I will sign any order you write." Um, that set the precedent for the next 23 years of working with him. And the way I taught other nurses to recover hearts as well. I stand here today as just one person and one life that was touched by Toal. Since he passed, I have received multiple texts and Facebook messages sharing funny stories and memories that they had of Dr. Toal. And they always have to mention, and he loved your brownies. And he knew that I always saved the corner piece for him and hid it away in a locker so that he knew to ask for it when he saw the brownies were gone in the break room. I even bought a corner pan that only made corners just for him. It was a $46 pan. He asked me the last time I saw him, "Do you have that pan?" I said, "Yes." Many lives are forever changed just by knowing him. I've heard stories of how he helped with personal issues, with family needs. He gave many of my coworkers references for advanced programs because he was all about us extending and forwarding our education. He gave financial assistance to people that I'm now just hearing stories about. Lots of former patients have texted me telling me how wonderful he was and how their families were changed just by meeting him. My own daughter, who had been a dietary aide, he knew by name. And on her first day as a respiratory therapist, he walked up to her and said, "What are you doing here now in scrubs?" And she said, "Dr. Toal, I've graduated from respiratory school. I'm a respiratory therapist." He took her in his arms and wrapped his arms around her and said, "Welcome to the family." That's what he was like. That old country doctor he made us all feel like we were part of the family. He knew you by name, and he also had time for a conversation. We all know that is Toal time. He loved sharing knowledge. He would tell his patients and families how lucky they were that they had this nurse, his favorite nurse, taking care of him. Didn't matter who it was. That's what he said. And he always would say, "Susie knows. She knows the story about what I'm talking about." And I'd go, "What were we talking about?" He always made sure that they were at ease, never rushing and making sure that the family and the patient knew the treatment plan. If there was an OU game on, that usually extended the conversation. He loved sharing his published articles and would always make multiple copies and pass them out to everyone so that we could read them and discuss it with them. I worked next to him for 23 years. We shared lots of laughter and lots of tears when we saved patients' lives as well as when we weren't unable to. He would always thank the staff for what they did and reassure them that they had performed their duties appropriately. As a charge nurse, my duties were a wee bit different. I was always corralling him, pulling him away from the desk to go write orders and to get the surgery that I promised him 45 minutes ago. He was already away. That's another definition of Toal time. And about that styrofoam cup issue, I tried to fix it. I personally bought him a cup with his name on it and said, "I want you to use this." A week later, I saw him without the cup. I said, "Where's your cup at I bought you?" He said, "Oh, I took it home. I didn't want to lose it." He mentored all of us to do our best, and I saw how many lives in the past and in the future will be affected and touched because he was part of their life. He educated and he mentored, and those have moved on and are now sharing their education with other people, and those stories will continue. Every employee that worked with him considered him a friend. We stand here today together grieving the loss of our friend, Kyle Toal, Toal. He made all of us better just by knowing him He made us believe in ourselves, and I'm grateful for that gift. That old doctor wasn't just a surgeon, he was truly the heart of Norman. Thank you, Dr. Toal, your shift has ended. We'll honor your memory by striving to continue your mission here at Norman Regional.
Hello, I am Muhammad Salim, one of the Kyle's partners, like most of you know. Uh, I'm sorry, this is Kyle's memorial, and I don't have a blue fleece. Kyle, there's nothing I can tell you or say about Kyle that you don't already know. He was just an incredible man. Kyle told me once, he said, Salim, there's nothing you can screw up in a cath lab that I can't fix. quickly following that by saying, don't accept that as a challenge. But over the last 3 decades, I tested his declaration a few times. And every time Kyle through, every time he came through. And then there was this certain styrofoam cup, half filled with mud. Whenever you saw the styrofoam cup somewhere in the CCU or doctor's lounge, you knew Kyle was there, missing that cup. Kyle, whenever I ran into him, had any kind of conversation, be it medicine, be it politics, be it religion or history, I always walked away knowing a little more than I knew before. I miss having those conversations. Kyle was a lifetime learner. He has passion for learning, passion for teaching. We have established a scholarship fund through Norman Regional Foundation to perpetuate his legacy of lifetime learning. And that scholarship fund is for any of the hospital care workers who want to pursue or further their education. And in the program card, there's a QR code that you all can participate by donating to the fund so we can keep his legacy alive. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Toal family, for sharing him with us. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here. I am Archana Gautam, one of Dr. Toal's colleagues. We all have wonderful memories about Dr. Toal. He was one of a kind. I remember meeting Dr. Toal almost about 20 years ago when I was starting a cardiology. He always knew how to build confidence in you. He was always there. He treated everyone with respect. Didn't matter you were junior, senior, man or woman, and top to bottom. We will miss him, especially we did a heart valve clinic together. And whenever we had elderly couple, he will always ask them how long they have been married. And most of the time answer was 50 years, 40 years, 60 years. And the next question was, what is the secret of this marriage? So we'll miss him in the clinic. He was proud of his children. He always talked about Corley, John, and Ben, especially about his daughter. And I always remember in the clinic also, he will always say, do you have daughter? I am scared of daughters. So I need to ask Corley, was he really scared of her? I need to meet her one of these days. He always talked about Susan and her mission trips. And the last conversation about that trip was about your trip to Nepal. And he was just telling me how much he enjoys and wanted to spend more time with her. But of course, we are really grateful for his dedication to Norman Regional Hospital for almost 30 years. We will miss him, but he will live on in our hearts. As a part of Norman Regional Inspire Health Program, Norman Regional is going to dedicate cardiac OR under his name. So thank you to everyone, and thank you to the family for sharing him with us. Thank you.
The good news is I'm last. I've known Kyle for 3 decades, I guess, or a little longer. For some reason, all the time, he became Kyle Toal. That's how I addressed him. That was his title. It wasn't first, last. It was just Kyle Toal. And he would always fire back, "Hey, Ron." And so that's how we have greeted each other for a number of years. You also all know, if you knew him, that he is my fashion consultant, often and only seen in blue scrubs and some type of zip top. I seem to carry on that. I see many CVICU nurses, former CVICU nurses, unit secretaries. We may be short tonight, so if you'll see Brittany after this, we need to use you tonight. Everything that's been said is right on the money. I'm inadequate in representing the medical staff today, and we give an annual Physician of the Year award that is voted on by our healers. It's every fall. Last Wednesday, the Medical Executive Committee recommended and unanimously approved that award going forward be named Kyle Toal, MD, Physician of the Year. So we will continue this legacy in his name, voted on by the healers of this organization. I was on call one night at Porter and ICU. Kyle called me late at night. It was a couple years after this had opened. He said, "Hey, Ron, I got a guy sick." He'd been in the operating room with him for 5 or 6 hours. And I said, "Okay, I'll be over." It's around midnight. Got over there. It's one of those patients where there's more IV pumps in the room than staff in the entire floor. And walked into a very critical situation. The nurse was relatively young, but as always in the CVICU, everybody was in there helping. She was trying to get her bearings and said, "Okay, he told me to tell you this, 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 and this." And he said, "You call Boyd for this and this, you call me for this and this." And his interaction with our nursing staff and his ability to put you at ease is unparalleled. I have never seen it. He just can create a scenario, even in a critical situation, where the relationship between he and the staff is so awesome that it improves patient care. And that's just a gift. I don't know that you learn that. I saw the patient. I went and found the wife of the patient in the waiting room. Kyle had spent a few minutes preoperatively with her in the emergency department, and then a few minutes after the surgery with her. And I'm quite sure she was ready to invite him to their next Thanksgiving dinner. He had a way with people. He could deliver bad news or good news. He had empathy, sympathy, and within 15 minutes, these families felt like he was part of theirs. And again, that's a talent that's very, very rare. I finished and came down to this lounge right here. It was early morning. Nothing was on in there except the refrigerator lights. And there's Kyle sitting in there reading something on the computer with his glasses up on his forehead. And I got a water out of the fridge and sat down, looked right out this way. And expecting him to say something or interact, and we just kind of sat there in the quiet. And I later learned that this particular patient and the skill required to get this guy through this operation was phenomenal. There was multiple times during the case that Kyle had to improvise and go off script to get the guy through the surgery. And his talent and technical skill is and was amazing. Finally, he looked up from the screen and said, "Aaron, did you know that penguins can travel 150 miles and return back to where they started? And they think they have GPS in their brain. And it uses the magnetic fields of the earth to guide them." So he was sitting there reading an article about penguin migration and how they have these navigation skills. So we left, and the last thing is his humility. The guy was phenomenal. He was such a great guy, and he never boasted. He never bragged about anything. He was always looking towards the other person and the other patient. Gonna miss the guy. He was a bright light every day. You hate to see that out. I'm going to turn this over to one of our chaplains, Nick Napoli, who will kind of explain the next step of our ceremony and conclude. Thank all of you guys for coming. It's been a true honor to be up here today.
Before I explain how we're going to end, I would like to offer this time for Susan to come up and say a few words if you would like.
Okay. I said I wanted to do this. Now I'm not so sure I do. First, you guys have made today so special for us. And thanks, Benjamin. And told Kathy earlier as we were hauling all of Kyle's crap from his office into the back of Ben's truck, that Kathy had been on him for years to take home, and of course she never did. I said, Kathy, I know you know this, but you go from shock to numb, and then the sadness becomes so overwhelming, you just are weary. And that's where I was today before I came here, and you guys have made that so much better for me. So I thank you very much. I love hearing Kyle Toal stories. There are so many to tell, and we will keep telling them. But one of the things he loved most about his life was you all. He loved Norman Regional. He loved the people he worked with. He loved the patients he cared for. He loved taking on those crazy, weird challenges that nobody else but Kyle could figure out. As I was digging through some of his stuff, and you guys have already said all this today, but of the many things I found this paperweight that says, "A good doctor treats the disease. A great doctor treats the patient." That's Kyle Toal. And I hope that, and not just this health system, but all health systems, could capture his culture of caring, because that's what's going to make healthcare succeed. We all worry about so many things, but that culture of caring has to go on and on and on. So thank you all so much for giving us a very bright spot on our day today, and for the OR and the Doctor of the Year award. That's so special. And anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Before I explain this, I do have to tell just a really brief story, because I've heard so much about this cup up here. When I was a fresh new chaplain out on the floor, I had not been briefed yet by Dr. Boyd on the context of this. And so when I met Dr. Toal for the first time, I was under the impression that our cardiothoracic surgeon was walking around with his dip cup that he was spitting in and out of each of these patient rooms. And so I was concerned. But then when I heard the story and when I got to know Dr. Toal, I sort of saw past that and realized that this was a special man. And so to try and honor him, we will never be able to do that fully. To try. And each of you have these lanterns here with you. And so inside should be a marker or a pen. And if you would like to write something on the outside of the lantern with that pen to honor him, we are then going to turn on the little light that's inside them. And then if you would walk down to the water and just simply set off the lantern into the water with the light turned on. There might be a little tab behind the back that you might pull out. And then later this, we'll try to get a nice photo of all of these lit up out on the water. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close us in a really quick blessing to honor Kyle and to honor all that he's done. And then when I conclude that, if you would please just make your way down to the water and just be careful not to fall in. And so I'll offer this blessing now. God, there are few people who come into our lives quite like Dr. Toal. His ability to comfort, his ability to heal, his ability to laugh were unrivaled. And so as we try to pick up the pieces left with the void that's now in our life of his absence, I ask God that you would use his stories and his influence and his time in our presence to help us carry out his legacy and to not let his light fade by using those memories to empower us and to remind us of the great man that he was. There are many here, God, who might have a heart that is beating still, thanks to Kyle Toal. And it is it's those memories and those reminders that will keep his life alive in our lives. And so all of this, God, I just ask that you would honor this health system, this community, and Dr. Toal's family, and remind them that hope might be just around the corner. Amen. So please go ahead now and take a few moments if you'd like to write something on the outside. And when you're ready, go down and release it into the water. Thank you.
Nope.